Because I remember when I first learned the idea that I'm the creator of my reality and I'm not a victim of it, dude, I was so happy. That was the best news I had ever heard in my life because I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be oppressed. I didn't want to be at rock bottom. And
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, I'm really excited because I am talking to Rich Lopp. Hey, Rich.
how you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's we talked a year and a half ago or so, something like that, where you graciously invited me on your YouTube channel where I was able to share some of my story. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I've seen you in the YouTube world. I know that you have a channel and it's pretty heavily followed. So good for you for getting out there and doing that good work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my job. Like I said, for now.
for now. Yeah. And I want to read a little of your bio and then we'll start with your journey because your journey is fascinating. That's why I wanted you on here because I remember when we talked, I thought, wow, you definitely have a journey that people need to know about how you've overcome, right? Okay, let me pull it up. Okay, my journey began in the summer of 2015 when, after being released from a psychiatric facility for a suicide attempt, I lost everything and went homeless. After turning myself into a homeless shelter recovery program, I was sitting around watching YouTube videos at McDonald's one day so I could use their Wi-Fi, and I accidentally found a law of attraction video. Accidentally, right?
Yeah.
I became obsessed with it and addicted to it, and that's where my path started. I'm still on that path right now, and now I help coach people through their challenges in life by teaching them the mechanics of energy behavior. Awesome.
Yeah, that was
Just
the short condensed version of it, but yeah,
course.
that's basically the gist of it.
Of course, yeah. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that, your background and the work you do, and we'll, chat along the way.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to say where it began because I think it's looking back, it was probably a path that was trying to begin long before it did, but I'm so stubborn that I just held off and fought and held off and fought for the longest time, and it got to the point I had just left my first marriage and was in the process of trying to pick myself up and put myself on my own 2 feet, but I was struggling with that. I started drinking very heavily, and right in the middle of all that, my ex-wife called me and said, I need you to come get the kids. I can't take care of the kids. So I had to go get the kids. So here I am, barely even on my own 2 feet. I'm a single father and I have a serious drinking problem. And I'm just spiraling downhill like so fast. I'm not seeing the point in any of this life at all. And I remember I had been considering, maybe I'm just an accident. I was at that point where you couldn't tell me that I'm needed here, that my existence is important. I have 2 little girls. I have 2 toddlers. I have a family. You couldn't explain that to me. I was absolutely convinced that I was a burden on everybody. I was absolutely convinced that even my kids would be better off without me. It was pretty dark. And it got to a point where I just went numb. I just went numb. I attempted suicide twice. The first time was, matter of fact, it was right around this time of year. It was a week before Thanksgiving, 2014. And long story short, somebody was there at the house and she cut me down and revived me. And then I thought, man, I messed up, didn't I? Okay. Well, this time I'm going to plan it out so that I'll do it when nobody is around. And I was like, but you know what? I have two toddlers at the house and I can't just like kill myself while they're at home alone by themselves. They could, turn the stove on, burn the house down. I mean, there's been times where I've fallen asleep and woke up with everything in the fridge and all the milk poured out. So I'm like, they could burn the house down. They could take off running out into traffic. I want to be able to make sure that my kids are okay. So I planned it out. And then April 10th, 2015, I came home from work, made sure I got my kids settled down watching TV, and went down into my cellar. I grabbed my iPhone and I looked up the New Albany Police Department from New Albany, Indiana on Facebook. I was like, I'm just going to write them on Facebook. I'm not going to waste any time calling them because, I don't want to get caught in this back and forth, whatnot. So I wrote them a message on Facebook saying, this is my name. This is my address. I have two kids here at the house and you need to come pick them up now because I'm about to kill myself. Wow. Click, and I clicked send. And then I don't know if it does this anymore, but back in the day, that was back in 2015, the little icon with their picture on it would go and drop down when they viewed the message.
Right.
So
yeah.
As soon as I saw that they read it, I threw my iPhone in the dirt and then put a belt around my neck and I dropped. And I woke up on the floor because this big, thick, heavy duty belt somehow broke. And by that time, the cops were beating the door down and the whole New Albany Police Department was at my front door. And I'm like, oh my God, that was so embarrassing. So they stuck me in a psych ward. And at that point, I'm not going to say that I realized my purpose or anything like that, but I was faced with the reality that I'm not allowed to leave. There is no way. I even took extra precautions. I know this wouldn't really maybe necessarily kill me, but I even downed every prescription medication that I had before I went and did it because my thought process was, well, maybe I'll have so much drugs in my system that if they try to revive me, my system won't work because I'm too doped up. And, I planned this out to a T. And I had one of those real big, thick, heavy duty belts, that has like the belts for men that they have the from the buckle all the way to the end. They got the two loops and the real thick buckle. Mm-hmm. How did that break? There's no way that broke. So anyway, I'm sitting there in the psych ward and I'm like, I'm not allowed to leave. That was just weighing on me very heavily. And I spent a month in there and then I got out of there and then everything just kept falling apart. And finally, long story short, I ended up homeless. I ended up living under a bridge. And it was interesting because there in southern Indiana, just a couple of towns over was a city called Jeffersonville, Indiana. Matter of fact, that's where Papa John's first started. And there was a very vast homeless community in this town, and they had a huge homeless outreach program. So there was a community of homeless, and that's where I went and lived. I had a couple of blood relatives. I had a cousin from my mom's side, and my biological father was homeless living on those streets. So they welcomed me in and took me in, and that's where I lived for the latter half of 2015. And then wintertime started rolling around, and I was like, man, I can't live outside in the winter. All these people are doing it. They're telling me that you pretty much have to live around a fire. Your existence consists of looking for firewood and sitting by the fire all winter long. I can't do that. So right across the bridge in Louisville, Kentucky, they have all of the resources that anybody could use to get yourself up out of that mess. But most people would straight up look you in the eye and tell you, I don't want to do all that. I don't want to go to no homeless shelter. Yeah. I like living like this. I ain't got no responsibilities. They get a disability check once a month and they blow it on prostitutes and drugs and whatnot. And they would straight up tell you that. Man, that ain't me.
Yeah.
So they have actually, it's a very famous, at the time, it was the most famous recovery program, I believe, in the world. It was called the Healing Place in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's a homeless shelter / recovery program. And it's like going into a drug rehab that's also like a boot camp at the same time. It's kind of similar to, like, I mean, you're not doing a bunch of workouts and stuff like that, but they treat you very similar to like the military, 5 o'clock in the morning, you're in this area of all these bunk beds, and somebody's coming through, flipping the lights on, screaming at you, and you got to stand up and make your bed real tight. And if the bed's not made good enough, they make you tear it apart and redo it, and
Wow.
open toilets and showers. And it was just like recovery boot camp. And I'm like, well, at least I got a roof over my head,
Hmm.
And I ended up acquiring a free government issued Obama phone. I don't know if you remember those back in the day when Obama was president. They had this program where if you could prove that you were on government assistance, you could get a free phone. They would give you a free cell phone, and it would get reloaded with 250 free minutes every month. And I grabbed me one of those, and I had moved on to a transitionary home at this point, and to pass the time, I would go sit in McDonald's and watch YouTube videos. And as you probably know, because this is what I interviewed you for, my favorite things to watch on YouTube were near-death experiences. And that's what I was doing. I was on YouTube using their Wi-Fi, looking at near-death experiences. And this video popped up, and the title was, "I Saw the Law of Attraction in My NDE."
Mm.
And it was a lady named Terry Rose. And I remember thinking, what in the world is that? I've been watching near-death experience videos for 4 or 5 years now. I have never heard of law of attraction. So and it wasn't even anything all that special. It was just like maybe a 5-minute video where she breaks down and explains that we all have this ability that we were born with, that has to do with the way you think, the way you feel, and that has to do with how you attract and create your life experiences. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Is this a real thing? You mean to tell me that all this stuff I've been going through, I created it? And not only did I create it, but I actually have the power to uncreate it and like create anything that I want. Watch me. And I became addicted to it and obsessed with it. And from that point forward, my path has just been just a steady, that was me starting off at rock bottom. And, I went from the homeless shelter to a 1-bedroom apartment, and then just kept, working my way up to where, there's a lot kind of in between there. But now, basically where you see me now was what happened when I decided to manifest a business, and the universe gave it to me in a really weird way, so that's a longer version of where my path began.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And don't you love how spirit works?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not your time, kind of things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
People say, when I share my experience, people will also say, well, I want to have a near-death experience. I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you really don't. It's not. The people I've talked to, and I've seen videos, lots of videos of near NDEs too, is that your life is pretty hard afterwards. Mine was, I ended up spending a week in the psych ward. I don't know if I shared that with you on there, but I ended up spending a week in the psych ward after my head injury and after my what I was going through too. And I thought, hey, everyone needs to spend a week in the psych ward because it's like a vacation.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, on that note, though, that is interesting that you brought that up, because I wasn't aware that I've done a few interviews like this before, and it's been brought to my attention that this is kind of turning into a bit of an epidemic. And I thought it was just me, where, like I said, my favorite literature to sit around and read and videos to watch was near-death experiences. And that did not help me with my suicidal tendencies. Yeah. it kind of made it worse. You know, the more I would hear it, the more I was like, good God, if that's what it's like over there, what am I doing here? I don't want to be here, you know? And yeah, so I can remember feeling, you know, like, yeah, I don't want to just have an NDE. I want to leave, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and whoops, and I believe that what healers, people who facilitate healing, because we're not doing the healing, right? People who facilitate healing can help us find those feelings and find those uh, that feeling of heaven, whatever you want to call it, the higher realms here in our current life. So
Mhm.
I believe that that's what it's all about. To be honest with you, that's my take on that.
Yeah, and it's
Because we
very
can.
tricky. It's
It
extremely
is.
tricky. That's even something I'm still working on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of complicated, but I've received many, many, many downloads on my journey. And one of the many downloads I've received is that I'm not allowed to remember too much, you know,
Mm.
because even now where I'm at today, I still don't really enjoy being a human on planet Earth. I don't really enjoy it. I've been told many, many times by several different mediums and psychics that I haven't been here very many times. I'm a volunteer who came here for a totally different reason than most other beings. And
Mm-hmm.
if you've never been in a human skin suit on planet Earth, and this is your first time here, it's not fun.
It's difficult.
Oh, it's difficult. And
Yeah.
and we're surrounded by all these other beings who have lived thousands, millions of lifetimes, and they're used to it.
Yeah.
You know, so they every time they leave one human skin suit, they just jump into another one, and they've been doing that over and over and over. And somebody like me hasn't done it very many times, so I feel
Mhm.
cramped in this little body, and it's just really uncomfortable. So,
No, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I know I've had quite a few lifetimes. I don't know what bodies I've been in. I believe I'm a walk-in, to be honest with you. But yeah,
mm,
in feeling the this, especially if you've traveled out of body and had an NDE, but I'd rather prefer to do it consciously in an out of body state, and you're free of this. There's nothing like it, and that's something that we can do. So with the law of attraction, so I take it you didn't see The Secret.
I did.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
mm,
then maybe.
I watched a little bit of it, and it kind of started to perturb me a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that ended up happening on my journey was I remember the day that I had made pretty decent progress on my path. I was finally at a point where I'm comfortable in life and living better than I ever have, but I still felt like there was something missing. So I remember the day that I even said this out loud. I said, "All right, universe, I know there's something missing with this whole law of attraction thing. There's something that nobody else is talking about, that there's something else to it. I'm ready to know what it is." And I released it. And it wasn't 2 days later, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a video pop up, and the caption said, "Former NASA scientist reveals the secrets about energy." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool."
Hmm.
And so I started digging into, you know, this person and who he was, and I ended up finding out that he had a mind mastery school where he breaks down and explains the actual science behind the mechanics and the inner workings of manifestation in a way that I'm not saying that most people who teach it and The Secret and whatnot, I'm not saying that they're wrong. It's just there's a lot of really important key elements that they're leaving out.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I could see why a lot of people, after seeing The Secret and hearing lots of people teaching it to the masses, why they wouldn't believe it. I can see that because there are some really, really important key elements that get left out of it. And that's all I ever set out to learn. And then once I learned that, that's when I really started making miracles happen in my life. That's when I went from making minimum wage to blowing past multiple six figures and really started making big things happen in my life is when I started learning the actual inner workings and the mechanics of it. And then that's when I was put in a position where now I help coach and guide people through, you know, their life's difficulties. And it's usually through like love relationships and whatnot. But the thing about it is energetically, everything functions on the same base set of principles. You know, it's just that, and all I have to do is teach you how to start trying to learn how to manifest one thing. And if you get it and you grasp it, it'll set off a domino effect where you'll start learning the energetic mechanics of how everything in your life is manifested,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice.
that's my calling in a nutshell.
So you have an academy, correct?
Yeah, it's on my website because I'm a tarot reader. That's my main source of income.
Mm-hmm.
But also on my website, I have a little school of self-mastery where I have some little video courses that help break things down and explain some things that honestly, and the thing about it is that a lot of the things that I don't want to say that I'm teaching you things you don't know as much as I'm helping you remember this.
Remember.
Yeah, because if the more you start learning how these things work and operate, it should trigger something in your mind that takes you back to me. I know when I started learning this, I was like, well, damn it, I knew that. I knew that when I was a little kid. And
Right.
the way we're so indoctrinated through the school systems and we're pretty much trained to think like just an employee, and it clouds it and blocks it and gets you thinking and functioning in a way where you're pretty much using your energy backwards and you're using it against yourself. And that's why so many people are trapped in their life, because they're enslaved by their own mind. And
Yes.
yeah, so sorry I trailed off. To answer your question,
Oh
yeah,
no. You can trail off all you want. Yeah, it's fascinating. No, I totally understand what you're saying. And you see that, especially in the work you do, where we are entrapped in our own minds because we're
mhm,
creating our world, we're co-creating our life,
yeah,
and what we have around us is what we've created.
mhm,
There's just no way around it. And
mhm,
you're right. We used to, and I totally believe that and seen that we used to know how to do this. We just it's been programmed out of us.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
funny that I love that your the School of Mastery, you said?
School
School
of
of Mastery?
self-mastery, yeah.
School of Self-Mastery. I'm studying some teachings called the Way of Mastery
Mm.
from information from Yeshua,
Oh,
who
hmm.
walked the planet and taught us all this,
Yeah.
how to
Mhm,
co-create with God, with the universe, with source, and take that everything we are experiencing is our creation.
mhm.
Yeah. So sounds like right up that alley.
Yeah, yeah. I really like to be one of the people who bridges the gap
Yeah.
between science and mysticism.
Yes.
You hear
Yeah.
people like Dr. Joe Dispenza. He does a real good job at that.
I was just thinking about him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And because I mean, if you listen to it, a lot of it, like Dr. Joe Dispenza will tell you, here's one of my favorite things that he says. The universe has no choice but to hand you evidence that supports what you believe. And the only thing a belief is a thought that you think over and over and over until it burns itself into your subconscious mind, writes itself into your neural circuitry, and then runs all by itself on autopilot, just like a computer program. And this
Mm-hmm.
is where, like, say, for example, affirmations. Okay. This is where I like to explain, I like to bridge the gap between science and mysticism. Like, for example, affirmations. Most people kind of get the idea that, they'll say things like, well, I say a couple of affirmations every now and then to assist the process. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's not the way it works. When
Yeah.
you say affirmations, you're doing the same thing in your brain that you're doing to your body when you go to the gym. Like say you're out of shape and you've gained some weight and you need to get in shape. Just saying a couple affirmations every now and then is just like going to the gym every now and then and lifting a couple weights every now and then. That's
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because what affirmations are meant to do is rewrite your neural circuitry, because
Mm-hmm.
that subconscious program is what we're focusing on. And like whatever it is that you're raised to believe, especially about yourself. Like when I first heard Dr. Joe Dispenza say that, at that point in my life, one belief that I had that I would tell myself all the time is I'm not good enough. I'm just not good enough. I'm just worthless, you know, and I didn't even put any conscious thought into this. That would just run all by itself on autopilot like a computer program. And I remember thinking, wait a minute. So what he's saying is that I have to break that habit of thought. So that thought, me thinking that, is actually wired into my brain. And I need to make it a habit. I need to break that habit and form a new habit. So I was like, well, I'm going to test it out and I'm going to see if this works. So I started telling myself I am successful. And it felt strange. Just saying that felt weird, uncomfortable. But I was like, no, I think I understand how this works now. So I'm going to start saying this all day, every day. And I did that for probably, 8 months. I would make it a point to, from the minute I woke up, I am successful. I am successful. I am successful. And it would feel real uncomfortable. It would give me panic attacks. It would feel strange and weird. But I kept saying, it took about 6 months, honestly, before I started noticing that that thought is running all by itself on autopilot. And it's like, oh, sweet. I think I've actually written new connections in my brain. It's the same faculties in your brain that govern any other habit, you know? And now I'm realizing that thought I am successful. And I'm actually starting to genuinely believe that success is right around the corner. And the next year, I made my first 6 figures.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I was like,
good
whoa,
for you.
Yeah, this stuff works.
So,
awesome. Yeah, being able to explain something as simple as affirmations in a way that makes sense, it's a habit. That affirmation is supposed to become a habit. You can't just say it a couple of times today and then maybe a couple of times tomorrow. And then you're not speaking to some external being out here that's going to reach down from the sky and help you out. You're saying it to yourself. That affirmation has to become a habit. And bridging that with neuroscience is my goal, you know, to be able to explain that in a way that makes sense. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And I have to go back to my teacher Yeshua 20 years ago. And when we were sitting down and having a conversation, and he said to me, are you sure? He kept saying, are you sure? Are you sure? And I'm like, am I sure what? What are you talking about? Am I sure? He says, listen, in my background tape that I was telling myself all the time was, I'm not worthy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not worthy. Just like what you were talking about. And so same thing. He said, and he gave me a new mantra to replace that mantra. And I've got goosebumps talking about it. Yeah. And the exact same thing. So, he just explained it to me in the scientific way, or the mechanics of our brain. But I understood it as we were talking, that we need to change our background tape that we tell ourselves. And sometimes, like you said, you can't even hear it.
Yeah. So you're saying he was responding to your subconscious mind?
He was responding to my subconscious, or what I was telling myself, that I didn't realize was even going on because of my history, what I was going on. And I felt like I was a failure. I wasn't worthy. And it all boils down to God's love, right? Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love. And so I felt like a failure. And so he said, no, that's not true. Let's replace that, because you don't need that anymore. That's
the part that on this path of trying to help guide people, one of the things that's so frustrating, the one thing I don't understand is when you try to help somebody understand this, and a lot of people will fight you and attack you. And I can't wrap my mind around that, because I remember when I first learned the idea that I'm the creator of my reality and I'm not a victim of it, dude, I was so happy. That was the best news I had ever heard in my life, because I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be oppressed. I didn't want to be at rock bottom. And one thing that I still can't quite figure out is there are so many people out there who will fight you when you try to tell them, no, it's not a matter of fair and unfair. You're not a victim. This is being created by your subconscious mind, and they'll fight you and attack you. The only thing that I can think is that there are a lot of beings who came here specifically to experience that. And that's what they wanted to experience. So they may have like some kind of default program or setting where they're going to fight against you if you try to take them off of the game they came here to play. That's the only thing I can think.
Yeah. 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 And, you know, I believe that in our spiritual progress, victimhood is probably that level where we start out, maybe. And so they've decided to move up the level when we've all been there at some point. I mean, since you haven't been on this earth very long, and you know, that's something like, I don't like this at all. But a lot of people can get stuck, as you know, in that victimhood because it's comfortable for them. It's interesting that you talk about this being a game and a virtual reality kind of thing, because I've known that for a while. Holographic reality, I've seen it, but I had a dream, more like an out of body, yesterday morning, where I was sitting with the architect of the reality, and we were having this conversation, and I was stuck in it at first, and I wasn't aware because it wasn't lucid, but I remember the conversation. I was stuck in this complex and I couldn't find my way out. It just felt, you know, like our reality. It was our reality. Many, 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 many rooms, many, many, many people who were happy doing their thing, you know, and everything. And I'm like, I want out of here. He showed me the way out, and I was there in another complex for a little while and came right back in, which could be the reincarnation trap that I was being shown. And then I sat down with who he called himself, the architect or the CEO, and along those lines. And I woke up thinking architect. He said exactly what you said, that there is he's impartial about whether people have, you know, good or bad or in victimhood or waking up or whatever. It's the way it's just set up for us to enjoy or play the game the way we are meant, or the way we can play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of my biggest spiritual mentors, she actually passed away a couple of years ago, but she has a YouTube channel called Naya's Corner of the Universe. She had a near-death experience. I don't know if you've heard of her or not, where she came all the way out of the whole game and brought back full recall. And the way she explains it is we're all creator God entities, all of us. And out in this multiverse, in this universe, there are games everywhere. We've all been a creator of games. And with this particular game that we're in, it's just another creator, just like you and me, who came up with this idea. And it's kind of like you said, that they said, okay, I got an idea. I'm going to create this game. Who wants to come in and be the architect? Who wants to come in, you know, almost like I got a building I want to build. Who wants to draw the blueprint?
Yeah.
Who wants to lay the plumbing? And then we just all came in and started co-creating and whatnot. So you're the only other person I've heard use a reference like that to explain it.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, if there's structure in the universe, if you believe there's structure in the universe, which I do, you know, and as you study more and more and learn more and more and get downloads more and more, you realize that it has to be structure. There's structure within, there's structure here. Why not without? I guess you could call it. Well, the farther in you go. But yeah, it makes sense that there would have to be some kind of structure. And yeah, some people stay in the game longer than others.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I can kind of understand how some people could get stuck in this. But they don't. The key that I still struggle with, and this is the fire that burns in my soul, is to try to figure out how to say that one thing that makes the light come on, so that you can just understand how it works. Because and this may just be something I'm creating in my own mind, I don't know, but I just have this pre-programmed burden of responsibility where I feel like there are lots of beings on this planet. There's beings on this planet who want to play this game. There's lots of them that actually love it, and they're here because they enjoy it. But there are also lots of beings here who want to try to figure out how to awaken and understand the inner workings of it and how to explain it in a way that makes sense. because I feel like it's my responsibility to at least get you to understand how it works, so that because it's hard for me to sleep at night thinking that there's somebody out here that wants to awaken, but nobody out there has explained it in a way that makes sense so that they understand how it works. So if I can get you to understand the inner workings of how it works, then it's up to you. You're operating on free will. You can play whatever game you want, you know?
Right.
So yeah, that's the tricky part. It's being a volunteer here in these times is a lot more challenging than people think. You know, it's not an easy game. It's not an easy
No,
job. It's very
no.
taxing.
And I believe that's why a lot of people are here, because it's because of the challenge. And that's one thing that the architect told me, was that that's why people are come here,
Mhm.
because of the challenge. He showed me you come here and you're chained, and then the challenge is to break the chains. That's
Mhm.
what the metaphor he showed me. And he said that a lot of people are attracted to that.
Yeah.
A
Mhm.
lot of souls are attracted to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my the woman I just told you about, Naya, she calls them the extreme sports junkies of the universe. You know, like the people who
Yeah.
climb Mount Everest. They don't do that because they think it's going to be fun. The
No.
people who jump out of a helicopter and ski down a mountain, they don't do that because they think it's, going to be easy. They do it because it's challenging. And
Yeah.
there's lots of beings who come here and they love getting trapped in this character and setting up challenges for themselves and trying to overcome it, and they enjoy it. I can appreciate it for what it is.
Hmm.
I can kind of understand it. I mean, and that's the thing too. If I really take a look at it, looking at my own journey of going from, like living under a bridge and diving in dumpsters to try to find food and almost starving to death and almost freezing to death. And then, jumping over on the other end of the spectrum where I'm sitting in the Eiffel Tower overlooking Las Vegas, eating a $500 plate of food. So going from one end of the spectrum to the other, I'm like, you know what? I think I can see why the humans enjoy playing this game, but it's still not a game that I really enjoy. I wouldn't want to do it again. you know? Yeah.
Yeah. When you're done, you're like, okay, end game, on to another one.
Yeah, pretty much. Unless, and I mean, anything's possible. I am open to the possibility that whenever I leave here, I could take a look back at it and go, whoa, dude, that was cool. I want to do it again. It's possible. I'm open to that. But so far as of right now, it's like I said, and this is another big thing that I try to help people understand. You hear all these cliche, fluffy phrases, like a big one is money doesn't buy happiness. That's a big one that we've all heard. And nobody believes it
Yeah.
who's never made money. Every single person you've ever met that has made a couple dollars in their life will tell you money doesn't buy happiness. So trying to figure out a way to explain that all the things we think are going to solve all of our problems, which usually have to do with romance and finance, that's
Hmm.
going to create your happiness for you. Even because I can remember I made it to the top of that mountain, right? Where I was living in my dream home, working my dream job, driving my dream car, married to my dream girl, had my kids back, my family. And I would still wake up sometimes just in the nastiest mood, just
Hmm.
uncomfortable, just not having a good day. And I remember when it clicked, I was like, dude, now I understand what they mean. It's kind of like, how when an adult is trying to explain to a toddler, you don't want to grow up.
Yeah.
You don't want to grow up. Toddlers, they see adults and it looks like they can just do whatever they want. So they think, my problem is I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm not allowed to have cookies before dinner. I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock. Once I can have cookies before dinner and stay up till midnight, I'm going to be happy, and then adults are trying to explain to the toddler, no, it's not like that.
Hmm.
That's very similar to the awakening journey. Once you
Right.
awaken spiritually, and like you just said, after you have an NDE, lots of people say it makes this life harder.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's still a very tough game, no matter what things you're able to create in this life. There's no easy path. Like
Right.
everybody has it hard here. Everybody. It's tough no matter
Everyone.
what you do.
Yeah, totally. I understand that. And it makes me think of when I used to work in the corporate world. I will say after my NDE, my guys kept telling me things will get better, later, things will get better soon. There's that word soon. Things will get better soon. Things will get better soon. And they did, after years of struggle. But yeah. So it wasn't, and doesn't mean that I don't have challenges now still, but I know how to handle them better.
Yeah.
That's the key. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you were talking about how money doesn't really make you happy, it reminds me of when I was in the corporate world where I had 3 bosses who were millionaires, multimillionaires, right? 2 of them were very unhappy. They were afraid of losing their money, and that's all they thought about was their money and their business and how not to lose their money.
Yeah.
The other one was a very happy person, and I noticed with him the difference was that his thoughts, and I'm not saying this in a religious way, but because he was Baptist, but his thoughts were on God. That was his priority, not losing his money or trying to make more money or always thinking that. He had that center. And I found that makes a huge difference for me and people I know in my life. And then the rest can follow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so that's where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can still be challenging and tricky too, because,
Sure.
no matter what term you want to use, God, I like to say universe just because
universe, sure.
That's just the word that I use, or sometimes spirit, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's all the same thing, but it's a trust-based process. And this goes back to when they always use the word having faith. I don't think a lot of people understand how hard that is to trust especially when you're going through something scary. Like let's say you're a millionaire and your business crashes. Are you able to trust that this is happening for a reason? Are you able to maintain the faith through that terribly horrifying experience that maybe the universe is doing this for a reason? Are you able to hold that? That's the tough part, is learning how to trust in the process. And that's what I spend most of my time trying to help people understand.